I did it! I did it! 30 drawings in 30 days. Actually, there's about 34. Bittersweet, but it's finally complete. So, let's take a look inside. This particular sketchbook has a story. As I toured the 14th sketchbook on this channel, this particular one is a challenge I set out for myself in the beginning of this year to complete 30 drawings in 30 days. This is actually a journal that was gifted to me by my mom for my birthday, and since it's got a special meaning and a special saying on the front, I decided to bring some special intention into it. And I gave myself a few parameters to focus on. The inside of the journal is broken down to a lined paper and a toned paper. And to introduce the drawings, I decided to take an excerpt from one of the writings I did and the lined paper and add a little bit of a typography into the front cover of the sketchbook. And it reads, "Everywhere you go, everything you do, you meet a moment that brings you back to you." As we begin, here are some intentions I set for context. Jumping into the very first page is a little frame I created of foliage study. The sketchbook starts in Key West, Florida, where I visited for the first time, and this was actually a view right outside of the door of where I was staying. The door was fully glass, so I decided to just capture all the foliage that I saw, sipping on morning coffee and just looking right outside of the glass door. I was waking up with lots of creativity and wanting to draw, so I just started the very first page, and that's how it was born. The greenery and foliage instantly sparked my inspiration. This was a corner perspective view on Front Street, also in Key West. We were riding around on some bikes and my friend's locks of the bikes actually broke, so we were waiting for them to come fix it. And as I was waiting, I just struck this photo, but I did draw it later in the day. However, I wanted to capture this lovely perspective and play around with the lights and darks and the shadows and how I can do that with the cross-hatching. I wanted to play around with the direction of the way I shade and how that actually shows where the lights and darks are coming from. There's something about signs and traffic posts or light posts that I really love. They're just super fun to draw, so I had to include it in the sketch. Now, a little fun fact is this was my very first long 4-hour drive down to the island, all by myself, and I happened to stop by this really delicious place. It's called Harriet's Restaurant. Took a little stop for food and I had a little corner all to myself, and I felt like the shape of the sketchbook was the perfect composition to capture this long window right in front of me with the cute curtains. I really wanted to focus on framing the table and having the perspective go towards my view, which is what exactly I was looking at. Almost felt like I was capturing a still life, and I had a lot of fun drawing this one. Just another special moment to commemorate in the sketchbook. Oh, and by the way, they had the craziest selection of muffins that they're famous for. Just look at those flavors, and you best believe I grabbed a few before I left. I was on a walk once on Duval Street, and I saw this beautiful church, and there was something about the way that the lighting was hitting on it from the right. The view was pretty complex, but I decided to capture it anyway and focus on creating a little bit of silhouettes on the people crossing the street. I'm a sucker for really beautiful lighting and the sun hitting a building or a house or a front entrance. And since I'm not using any color for this challenge, I decided to challenge myself and capture that with just ink. This was a study of palm trees done on the 7 Mile Bridge. It's a long bridge before you get onto the islands. As I was exploring, I took a little stop, parked the car, just came out to look around and enjoy the surroundings because all around was this long stretch of a bridge and water everywhere. I also took a really grand nap here as I was getting used to the long ride. And as someone who lives in a warm place, I'm always studying palm trees now, but I've never actually done a larger, more intricate study, so I decided to do this one in ink, and it's a pretty sweet one. If you've been following me for a while, you know that I love old cars and just vintage anything. As soon as I arrived on my location, I just spotted this red truck. It was gorgeous and I had to put it in the sketchbook. As I was a few drawings into the challenge, I started to play around with deeper contrast, composition, and it was my first panoramic view in this book. Simply flipping it to the side allowed me to create a whole other story, and this also inspired me to create a specific kind of Instagram post to share what I see versus what I draw. Just to experiment on new ways to share it with you guys, and you loved it. Okay, here's the next page where I studied some roosters. I really love this drawing actually, and I am very proud of that little foot. If you've ever been to Key West, there's roosters everywhere, which I'm definitely not used to seeing, but I fell in love and they are just so majestic and gorgeous. In this drawing, I really wanted to capture their kind of body language and the way that they walk. I tried to tap into their essence and just the way they are. And I find birds quite fascinating, so this was just a joy to draw for me. And looking at these now, I'm actually brought back to the moment where I remember feeling super proud of the drawing and its contrasts. It's got the lights and the shadows, which is something I was striving to achieve with ink. And as I did more of these, I felt like I was getting closer and closer to my goal. Here's a view I did while I was exploring and going for a walk. It was off of this dock and I ended up spotting these two seagulls that were flying together everywhere. I was just observing and they happened to cross my view. So I wanted to capture that in this sketch as if they're taking flight and going on an adventure together. Maybe there's a story that you can create by just simply looking at it. To try to enhance some values and create a bit more reflection in the water, I experimented with a gray wash marker, but that was just a trial and error. Besides, I quickly realized that every drawing was bringing me into a sweet journey. Okay, speaking of sweet, this was another restaurant in Key West called Moondog, but they have a bakery section. Once you walk in, there is these delicious desserts just right at the front, and I spotted the baker just doing her thing, and I loved all the complex details that were in my view. And as someone who loves to bake, I know how much work and how much effort and love goes into all of that. So to commemorate the moment and also give huge credits to the desserts, I wanted to capture her in her element. And it was really fun getting lost in the details and learning some more perspective. Okay, I know I said I would use one medium. I had to make one exception for this drawing of this rooster that I saw once again. I fell in love with them and I just wanted to create some color and do a study and see how I can combine gouache with ink. I also had this rare opportunity to sit down and have them literally walk about 3 to 4 inches in front of me. So I definitely thought to take the opportunity to paint a little and add some color to see how that would impact the drawing. Sometimes you just have to make these exceptions and leave room for some creativity to flow through. The moment took over as I was playing some music. I just couldn't help it, and I have to say the paper held up pretty well. I was convinced that this tone paper sketchbook, although it's not anything fancy of paper, it was a good mighty paper, especially for its price. Here is another view I saw of foliage, and I wanted to create a more improved drawing from the very first one. It was a similar view in the garden, but I tried to play around with a little bit more contrast. And I also asked myself, okay, how can we tell a bit more of a story? So I created more blacks as shadows to bring those leaves forward and the branches. This set the frame and the composition and created a bit more of a vignette feel. My view had some shadows in the back, but I decided to leave light there. Just an artistic choice to have the viewer wonder what's going on in the path or what's on the other side. And the beauty of all of that is it happens in the moment and completely unplanned. Speaking of the moment, I was passing by a front door. The entrance was super cute and tucked away, but it also had an inviting feel with lots of foliage surrounding it. And I haven't tried it in the sketchbook yet, but I thought, what if I created this little window in a square composition? Almost as if that view is living in the sketchbook on its own. And funnily enough, this was the entrance of where I ended up staying for a little while. A long story short, it ended up being a special place full of lots of loving memories, lots of smiles, and showing up with a little bit more love every day seemed to be a common lesson this week. Alright, this next page was a street that I came across called Love Lane. Talk about synchronicities, I know. And before we get into this page, I just quickly want to show some love for our sponsors, Squarespace. This is the all-in-one platform for you to build your website, showcase your art, whether it's your portfolio or some of your sketchbooks. Your website is the place where people find out more about you, what's new, I'm super happy that I found a template that holds my shop, it's able to hold my portfolio, have a contact page, and everything is beautifully organized and displayed on my site. I also have some sketchbook scans in case you want to see some previous sketchbook tours, and I personally love how clean and functional everything is. And the way I have my portfolio set up is through these little folders, so I have some illustrations and some of my larger oil paintings, and definitely I recommend you give it a try. So go to squarespace.com for your free trial, and when you're ready to launch, go to squarespace.com/JessCarp for 10% off your first purchase of a website or domain. Okay, so love is one of my favorite topics, and if I find a street sign that says that, I definitely have to capture it. It was also really funny to come across because I was just taking a nice little stroll after having some lunch, and the street sign itself was slightly tucked away, and since I was passing through, I snapped a few photos and created my own composition after. I decided to place the street sign right in the center and have the house a little bit towards the back and then the foliage framing the front. And I also explored with a really tiny little ink pen just to see if I'd really like the delicate lines and how that would play out. And just by looking at different views, I wanted to create more depth by adding this darker shadow that you see in the foliage. So I tried to implement that in this sketch, yet leaving a little bit of white areas to let the eye fill that in on its own. On this next page, I had come across this view of a sailboat. During the long drive, you're surrounded by water, and it is just so lovely to see the sun catching the light and the way the light dances on the water. And I took a little stop to also just admire it, and it was literally sparkling in the water. And this page and its composition actually reminds me of like a little book cover. But after making the drawing, I added a quote that I came across that wrote, "A sailor is an artist whose medium is the sea." Moving on to this next drawing, it may be one of my favorites in this journal. I've been consciously making the effort to go out to do walks in nature, and I have a park nearby that I never really went to, but I live right near, and the little tree said "wrong way." And of course, I had to make my way through that little path, where I ended up having some lunch and doing a little picnic and doing a little meditation that was super insightful. So I wanted to capture that in this drawing, and it almost tells a story once I look back at it. I wasn't sure as to why the sign said "wrong way" because once I actually went through the little path, I was met with so much beautiful nature. There were these little arcs and trees framing the path. And this moment and this day was exactly what I needed to just sit amongst some trees and hang out and enjoy some nature. This is a drawing of the Pasadena City Hall in Pasadena, California. I had a beautiful opportunity to go do a talk over there. So this was one of the days I just did some exploring and decided to capture this in the sketchbook. And I have to say, it's a really successful drawing in my opinion, and I'm very happy with the way that it came out with the little triad here. I started to ask myself and have a conversation on what's going to be the star of the show and how things are proportionate to one another. And the architecture itself reminded me of Europe just a bit, and definitely brought in some nostalgia to when I traveled in Italy. For me, there's something super therapeutic about drawing complex shapes, little details, and architecture like that. And if I see a super cool lamppost, yep, it's being drawn. I guess we've got a common theme in love for birds that I'm only realizing as I'm touring this, but this was a drawing I wanted to try with the most darkest shadows and capture this beautiful bird I saw in all of the foliage. Kind of zoomed in and creating a composition where the foliage is the light of the paper that I'm just leaving, and then the background is more filled in with lots of blacks, and also playing with intentional asymmetry. You may recognize this drawing from a previous video, but I brought you guys along on the process when I introduced the challenge in the first place. I'll have the video linked below if you want to check it out. I've also mentioned I lately have a love for trees, and this quickly became one of my favorite drawings here, but I wanted to play with all the things that I learned in the previous drawings and applying it here into this one. If there's something that I'd love for you to take away in this video is drawing things that you love and being super excited about the topic that you love to draw. Capturing moments that are special to you and that touch your heart definitely impact your art to the most positive and impactful way. Here's a drawing of a baseball player I met, and I wanted to play around with a figure since I haven't added one in the sketchbook yet. And then I decided to do the same by placing some figures in an environment. This was a family I saw doing an activity together. They were going kayaking on a beautiful sunny day. On this day, I actually went out painting on location. I posted the video on Instagram, but this was another photo that I've taken just to draw later or have in my creative library. So then I decided to put it in this sketchbook. I really wanted to play around with random little ink lines that I love to do in the clouds, in the water, and seeing how I can create a different language and pattern in my ink work. But also wanted to remind myself to capture moments of families enjoying activities together. Because in the end, those moments outside are the ones that we remember most. This was a really gloomy day in Florida. It was snowing in North Florida, but down where I was nice and rainy. But I wanted to do a sketchbook date and I couldn't sit outside, so I took you guys along the whole ride inside of my car. If you want to check that video out, I'll have it linked below as well. It was one of the few times I was sketching in my car. Fun fact, I did get a new car, so I've been spending lots of time exploring how I can create from location and just be on the go and drawing. And I really found the feeling of a little sanctuary being inside the car and drawing from my view. Here, playing with a completely different type of composition, I was out on the beach and I wanted to explore all the different shapes and types of humans that I saw. I also wanted to play around with filling some shapes in completely black to see how they fill and play a role in the whole page as one. And I titled it Humans on the Beach, and I wrote it in Spanish because I'm trying to learn Spanish now. And I think this is a really fun page and really fun to look back at as well, because I remember each and every person and who I drew, which is pretty wild. That's why I love drawing and capturing moments in my sketchbook, and it's something I'm super passionate about. So yeah, lots of fun shapes and characters here. Exploring ways to push it all was an awesome challenge for this page. And you know, I think I could see this being a fun postcard. Yep, can you tell I've been falling in love with trees? Here's another tree I came across that had the most beautiful roots, and it reminded me to take a look at them and really study their complexity, but also how much they ground into the earth. It's a really deep and fascinating subject to me, and in a previous video where I shared the process of the other tree, you guys seem to connect with it as well, so it's a common subject that I believe we all can relate to. I was once out food shopping and I came across these beautiful pink peonies that sparked my attention immediately, and I gathered a bunch of different eucalyptus leaves and other little things to put together in the vase, and I wanted to try some flower arrangements. I was a little curious about that and never really taken a class before, but I had grabbed them and created this little vase back home just from sheer intuition, and it brought all this gratitude into the moment. And I have to say, it really has been a chance for me to tap into some feminine nature as well. I ended up going back to the Keys for another little mini getaway, and this was a view of a front door. I feel like the entryway to a home can say so much and can tell a whole story. And I feel like they're super playful and fun to draw, since you can play around with the texture of the foliage and the shapes of the entrance, sprinkle a little bit of perspective in there, all to make for a nice sweet drawing and great use of practicing overlapping shapes. This next drawing was of another bird, yet again, focusing more on a delicate line and just having the bird sit on the page all on its own without any background. I saw him just drinking some water and enjoying the day. And by the way, this is the white ibis. These next pages were a little special because anywhere I looked on the beach that day, I noticed the bond of a mother and a baby. I found it quite interesting that I just saw so many moms with their child. And I have a really beautiful relationship with my mom, and she's like my best friend, so I wanted to write about the bond between a mother and child and how it's so pure. And honestly, it's just super beautiful and special to witness. At the end of the month, I ended up taking a small weekend trip to the Bahamas. This was an Ocean Cay, and I ended up painting this lighthouse, but I also wanted to do a sketch of it in black and white and play around with the little crosshatches to create these rays, giving it the effect that it's emanating out into the sky. The water was crystal clear and the view was so enticing, and here's actually the painting that I did in the larger sketchbook. I've also been working on it simultaneously. It's a 8x10 size, but I've been using gouache in there and been loving it. This was also coming off into Ocean Cay, and I saw this beautiful pink building that compositionally sparked my attention. It was perfect for a drawing. And looking at it now, it will probably need to be a painting study as well. But I definitely feel like I achieved my intention here with creating contrast and great shapes to have the drawing work as a whole. I think the mix of triangles and squares and all these different little textures and the perspective lines meeting towards the tree just makes it feel good as a whole. This next drawing is to commemorate my very first rock stacking experience. I instantly fell in love, and it was so cool to see it in daylight versus a sunset. This was also back out in the Bahamas. It's something I've seen before and I've witnessed before, but I've never actually tried it. And let me tell you guys, stacking the rocks in all these different ways and finding balance was so much of what I connect to and how I do life. It also allowed me to connect with nature, and I found like a different form of meditation through it. And I have to say, drawing the rocks was just as fun as building and balancing them. One of the best things about coming home from trips is being able to see my favorite floof and cat, Matilda, and this is her sleeping and being silly one day on the art desk. And I have at least one drawing of her in every single sketchbook, so I had to commemorate the sweetest moment ever when she takes these delicious, cute naps. And guess what? We at last but not least have arrived to our final page, and this is of a flower bouquet of my actual very first flower arrangement class. And I decided to wrap it up with this because I took my mom on a floral arrangement class for her birthday, and once I finished the bouquet, I brought it home and had to commemorate and put it into the sketchbook. I learned so much this month on creative expression and fueling your creativity in all these different types of ways and exploring your feminine side, all of that through growth, love, experimentation, surrendering to the miracles of the moments that come up, and simply being grateful and present through it all. Showing up to this sketchbook every day this month has been like watering my flowers and my creative practice. It holds so many special memories and feelings, and although it's quite vulnerable to share with you all over the world, I'm grateful to be able to share a piece of my heart with you wherever you are. But guess what? Coming up in the next video, I'm going to share 7 things I learned after finishing the sketchbook. So definitely subscribe to my channel so you don't miss it when we sit down and talk about that. These are things that I like to pay attention to, things that I find special, things that have helped me, and in hopes that they'll help you too. Okay, so if you made it this far in the video, I just want to say thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for being here. I hope you found this insightful and helpful. I definitely did. However, I am thinking about doing this kind of challenge with another medium, so if you have any suggestions, drop them in the comments below on what you think I should tackle next. I want to say thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for your support. We are almost at 500K on this channel. Oh my gosh, like that's so crazy. I just want to say thank you, thank you, thank you. And if you have any cool ideas for a 500K video, also drop that in the comments. I'm sending you lots of love wherever you are, and I'll see you guys in the next one.